Alright, this is a beginner bass video that will help you get started if you are a new bass player at any age, or if you're a band teacher and bass is not your main instrument. This will help you get started and help your students get started. So I'm just going to go through a few basic techniques, starting with just setting up the instrument and your amplifier. So if you have an electric bass and an amplifier, you should have your cable too. If you're new to the amp, and say it's at a school or you just bought it, what you should do before you turn it on is take all of the dials and turn them all the way down. Let me take you to the amp first. Okay, so here we are at my guitar amplifier. It's actually a guitar amplifier, but I'm putting my bass through it today. It's at low volumes. It's not going to be a big issue if I'm playing the bass through it. Higher volumes, you want to get a better bass amp, and just for a better sound, just get yourself a bass amp. But on most of your amps, you're going to find a bunch of dials, and they might already be turned up. And what I like to do is start by turning them all the way down. The reason I do this is because if I'm unfamiliar with the amp, the last thing I want is for it to be super loud when I turn it on. I don't want to get blasted. So if I don't really know what I'm dealing with, I'm going to turn everything down. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my cable plugged into the input, and I'm going to plug that into the jack on my bass. So I'm going to show you that. Here, I'll bring the bass over. So here's my bass, and my jack is right at the bottom there. I'm going to plug it in, and the amp is still off. And now my bass is plugged in. What I'm going to do next when I turn the amp on is find, if you have bass, middle, and treble, what you're going to want to do is turn those on first. And I'm going to go about halfway. Just like that. So they're all at about half, and then sometimes you have a standby switch. So I'm going to turn that on, so I'm not on standby. Standby means you're not going to get any sound no matter what the settings are. Next thing I'm going to do, you might have volume and you might have master volume. I have both. In this case, I'm going to turn those up a little bit, and then I'm going to try my bass and see if I get any sound. There we go. So now we're good, and I can adjust it as needed from there. And that's exactly what I'll do. But now I know when I turn the amp on, I'm not going to get blasted by the volume. Let's go back to the bass. Okay, so now I have the amp set up the way I like it, and I didn't get blasted by any unexpected sounds. I'm going to show you what happens when you pull out the cable while the amp is still on. You don't want to do this. It's not going to be a big deal at a low volume, but you want to encourage your students not to do this, or if you're learning yourself, try not to do this. So if I have the cable out, you might hear that. It's not too bad. I'm going to do something to make it worse. There you go. So that's what happens when you're unplugged and you start plugging it in. That. Now, it's not a huge deal, but if your amp is at a high volume, that sound's going to be really loud, and it could damage your amp. So it's always best to plug the instrument in first and then turn the amp on. All right, so let's get into playing position. So the bass is going to sit on your right leg if you are right-handed. If you're left-handed, it's just going to be the opposite. What you want to do next is lean the bass against your body so that there's a little triangle of space between your lap and where it reaches your chest right here. So a little space just like that. Now the bass is at an angle, so when I look down at it, I can actually see a bit of what I'm doing without having to crane my neck to lean over and see it. So now that it's positioned, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold it in place with my left hand. And with my right hand, the playing hand, about an inch or two from my elbow on my forearm, I'm going to bring it down to the edge of the bass right here, just near where it curves, right? I'm going to put my forearm there, and then I'm going to relax my hand, just like this. And then I'm going to bring that hand in front of the bass and take my thumb, and I'm going to put it on this pickup. You can adjust your arm a little bit till it feels comfortable. But when you find that pickup, you should still have that relaxed bend in your wrist. Not like this with your forearm pressed against the instrument and your shoulder up. Relaxed. Shoulder down and hand and wrist relaxed. The pickup is this little black piece right here. I have more than some basses. Some will just have one. If you have one here, put your thumb on it. There's a screw in the middle of it. Just to the right of that screw, place your thumb. If you don't have this, you just leave your thumb hanging free in this position. You don't need to anchor it on anything at all. Just leave it like this. When I have that pickup in place, what I'm going to do next is use my index and middle finger to pluck a string. Doesn't matter if we're in tune yet because we're going to do that next. So I'll put my index finger on the lowest string and I'm going to push down into it and slide off into the palm of my hand. When you do that, you don't want to slide off into your thumb or in front of your thumb. It's actually in the palm of your hand. See how you can see my thumb to the left of my fingers? You want to go into your hand like that. You can use your middle finger to do the same thing. And then you can learn to do this index and middle finger walk. We do it on the next string now. So now you take your next string and you put your index finger on it. We'll learn the names of the strings in a moment. Then you push right through the string and you land on the string beside it. You see how I landed on the next string? So I push right through and land on it. I like to think of it like in a wrestling ring, how you have the ropes on the side of the ring, and sometimes the wrestlers bounce into them. That's kind of what we're doing. We're just flinging off that string and bouncing into the next one. And you can try walking. Now when you go on the next string, you can move your thumb so that it anchors on the E string. If you weren't using an anchor before, you can continue not using an anchor, or you can anchor on the E string at this point. And then I try the next one. Oops, I guess I named the string. That's okay. We'll call it the E string now. And then you do the same thing on the last string. And this is how you pluck. Now we had to do that first because we're going to tune the bass next, and you have to be able to pluck to tune it. So here are your tuning keys or machine heads. Now what I use to tune is an app called Guitar Tuna. So I'm going to get my phone out. It's a free app. Now I don't remember if it's actually free for the bass feature. I know the guitar feature is free. But the app essentially costs the same to buy as an electric tuner. So I just buy the app and then I can tune guitars, basses, mandolins, whatever I want. But I think the bass feature might come free. So it's called Guitar Tuna and it's a good app to download. If not, you can buy a tuner that goes on the head of your instrument or one that you plug into from any local guitar store. So I've got my Tuna out. And it has the names of the strings written on it, which is nice. It says E, A, D, G. So what I do to remember the string names is Elvis always dances good. It's bad grammar, but it sure works. Elvis always dances good. And what I'm going to do first is I'll look at my tuner, and I'll play my E string, my Elvis string, and it will tell me if I'm in tune. And it just dinged because I'm in tune. If I was not in tune, what I would do is I'd start turning the dial. Well, not the dial, start tuning the tuning key, like this. And there's a little hairpin on your tuner, no matter which tuner you use, that's going to try to move towards the center line. It usually will turn green or something like that to tell you you're in tune. So watch that dial, pluck your string, and when you turn this, you're going to see if it's going towards the center. If it's not going towards the center, you might be turning the wrong way, so then you just adjust it. Generally, to tune up, if your bass is strung right, when you put your hand on the tuning peg or the tuning key, what you're going to do is turn it this way. So you want to turn it away from you. You're going to push it away, right? Just like this. You can really just see it on the tuner, though. It's the best way to do it. So this is now in tune. There we go. I'm just going to do that with each string. So this one's out of tune. If you don't know where the peg is, what you could do is just follow the string until you find it, and then you know which one it is. And just do a little turn. A little bit goes a long way, and you'll see that little hairpin move. And there we go, we get the ding. The next one is way over here. And once again, you can follow the string if you need to find it. There it is. And there it is. So I'm all in tune now. It wasn't too bad. Hopefully your tuning is not too bad. If you're a band teacher, you can help your students do that for the first time. And now we're ready to go. So we've done our amp, our tuning, our right hand, and our sitting position. Let's look at the left hand now. So we've learned how to get the instrument in tune and pluck, but now we have to learn how to actually fret it. So all of these metal bars that are going across the neck here, those are called the frets. And when you press down on the frets, you change the sound by shortening the string. So we're just going to try that on this E string, and we're going to try playing the lowest fret. So what I'll do is start by taking my thumb and putting it behind the instrument, just behind the center of this second fret area. So right between these two frets, I'm going to put my thumb back there. And you'll notice that you can't really see my thumb coming up and over the neck. It should be behind the neck. What I'm going to do next is take my first finger. I'm going to reach over and press down the string right behind the fret. If you're looking from your point of view on the camera there, you might not even see the fret because I'm very close to it, but I'm not on top of it. Right behind the fret, press it down, not hard, but firmly, and then pluck the string. And you will have changed the note. And you can check by releasing your finger, and you'll get a new note. Just like that. We can try pressing down farther away from the fret. Press down closer to the end of the instrument here so that there's lots of room between the fret, and you'll find that you get this sound. Oof. You get that buzz. Now that's because you have to make a good connection with the fret to make a good sound. So you've got your fret, and your string has to be pressing right up against it to make a good sound. If it's not pressing up against it firmly, it flaps against it and you get a buzzing sound. So what we need to do is get really close to it and get a firm grip on it so you get a nice sound. If you play on top of the fret, what happens is you kind of get a bit of the next note and a bit of the first note. See, because I'm on top of it, I can kind of slip into the other note, and if I'm on top of it, the sound isn't often that good too. Sometimes it gets a little bit muted. You might not be able to hear that. So right behind the fret is where you want to play. We can try with the second finger on fret 2 now. So I pressed right behind fret number 2, and I changed the sound again. Now on the bass, we're about to talk about a new subject here, but we're still kind of talking about using your left hand. We're going to talk about positions. On the bass and other fretted instruments, wherever your first finger is the position that you're in. So when I'm in position 1, my finger is right behind, my first finger is behind first fret. And I can reach fret 1, 2, and 3. If I put my first finger behind fret number 2, now I'm in second position, and I can reach fret 2, 3, and 4. If I go behind fret number 5 with my first finger, I'm in the 5th position, and I can reach 5, 6, and 7. Now you notice I'm using the 3rd and 4th finger together. Because the strings are so thick and the frets are so wide, we actually combine these two fingers. Once I get up into the 5th position, you can absolutely start using 4 fingers. The frets are a lot closer there. But down in 1st position, which is where you'll mostly be playing as a beginner, especially in band class, because it's where you're going to find the key F and B flat, what you want to do is combine finger 3 and 4, and that'll help you get a really good, strong grip on the 3rd fret when you play it, so you don't get any buzzes, like that. So a good exercise for playing in 1st position and using your fingers is just to play the open string, play fret 1, play fret 2 without moving finger 1 off the string, and then add finger 3 and 4. You should have all your fingers pressed down at this point because this represents a good hand position as opposed to this. You see how my fingers flew away? We don't want that. We want you to keep close to the frets and to the fretboard. So when you practice this exercise, keep those fingers pressed down, then switch strings and do the same thing. In my right hand, I'm alternating fingers, index and middle. Now as I move to the next string, I'm going to move my thumb down to a new anchoring spot. I'm still remembering to push right through the strings. And then, there we go. If you want to go backwards, start with all your fingers pressed down and remove them one by one. That'll help you develop some nice finger independence. So I put them all down on the string and then release them. All right. So we talked about your amp, your sitting position, your right hand, tuning, talked about left hand position, what a position is. Last thing I want to talk about is instrument parts and instrument care. And that should get you started on bass as a beginner or to teach band or just be in band. So instrument parts, I'm going to go over them quick and then we'll just talk about some care here. So this is the head of the instrument, pretty straightforward. This is the neck, and this of course is the body. So we have the head, the neck, and the body. Up here we have the tuning pegs, tuning keys, or machine heads. You can even just call them the tuners. If you buy a package of them, it will say machine heads on the package. So that's kind of like the official technical name for them. And hopefully you don't need to buy a pack, but maybe you will if you have trouble with them. So those are the machine heads. Then this little plastic piece at the top of the neck, this is called the nut, and its job is to hold the strings in place. You'll see there's grooves for the strings there. The next thing are the frets. So the frets are all of these metal wires, I guess, that are going down the neck, and they just help you change the note because you press down right behind them, connects with the fret, and shortens the string. So those are the frets. We have these dots here, which are called inlays because they are inlaid into the fretboard, and they just mark different areas on your bass. So they mark fret 3, 5, 7, and 9. And then you have a special one here. Usually it's 2 dots. I've got 2 dots here that you can't see, but I also have this B50 mark here, which I think is just a model of bass. This one is an even number because that's the octave. So you find the octave of every string there. So it gets its own special distinction. Sometimes you don't have inlays that mark 3, 5, 7, 9. Sometimes you just have 5, 7, 9. Sometimes you just have 7. This one happens to have more. On the body, we have, this is the strap button. Most of your basses will have these, and this is where you attach a strap. Now, as we get down to the body, this is where you want to watch for loose parts because the bass vibrates a lot and things do come loose. So these sometimes come loose, the strap buttons. You can tighten them with a screwdriver pretty easily. You don't want to over tighten anything. But if these come loose, you might want to tighten them because the last thing you want is your bass to fall while you're holding a strap and then you get some damage on it. We've got the pickups, which are magnets that pick up the sound. So you play your string and the magnetic pickup senses the vibration of that metal string and that sends that signal right through to the amplifier. You might have 3, you might have 2, you might have 1. But that doesn't really matter all that much. Down here, we've got the bridge. The bridge is where the strings are held. If you look underneath the bridge, you can see the strings have ball bearings that are coming through the bridge, and they're stopped by the bridge. And this part here is something that you won't really touch. This has to do with intonation, which is just on the bass, it's really that this is an E, and it's in tune, and the E at 12th fret should also be in tune. And if that's not the case, you might want to bring your bass to a guitar repair person and they can play with the adjustment of the bridge, and that will help your problem. What else we got? Just 2 more things. So you might have different amounts of these pots, they're called, which is short for potentiometers. So we just call them pots. They're your volume and tone. The tone is not something that you might perceive as a beginner, but first of all, they're often not labeled, so you kind of have to play with them to figure out which is which. The volume one is obvious because when you turn that one, you won't have volume. I usually leave that at full blast and I adjust my volume on the amplifier, but if you can't get to your amplifier easily, you can adjust the volume there. The tone ones What they do is if you turn them all the way down, you'll hear the sound of the bass is very, very soft and mellow, almost like it's coming from a different room. And if you turn them all the way up, it'll be a lot brighter. So the best way to experiment with those is to just totally turn them off and listen to your bass's sound, and then totally turn them on and compare it. On really cheap instruments, you really won't hear much of a difference. On a lot of instruments, you can hear a slight difference, but I find for beginners, it's kind of hard to tell. So you can experiment with those. Now we get to what I was saying about things becoming loose. I'm not touching mine right now because I need to tighten them. Inside, there are a bunch of wires connected to these pots, and underneath the top switch, the switch part here, I can actually take this off if I adjust it. You actually see a bit more of the mechanism inside. Mine are loose, so what's happening is when I turn the knob here, I'm actually not turning the knob, I'm turning the whole mechanism inside that's attached to the wires, and it's actually spinning around and making a mess of the wires. And eventually, if I keep doing that, the wires are going to come off, and then my bass is going to need a repair. So these things, if you start noticing they're loose, you want to take it to wherever you bought or rented the bass from and get them to tighten it. Because if you just keep turning them, you might actually be turning the stuff that's inside, and then you might end up with some issues. Down here, this is your output jack. So you plug your cable into this, and the sound goes to your amplifier. The output jack can also get loose. It's got a washer on it. Same thing, if that thing gets loose, be very careful turning it, because you might be turning actually what's on the inside, which is also connected to two wires, which just start crossing and eventually break. And I know this because it's happened to me before, and it's happening again right now, but the first time it happened to me, it broke and I had to get it fixed, and the guitar tech told me that, and I learned my lesson. So hopefully that gets you started on the bass. If you're a beginner or a band teacher, let me know if you have any questions or you want to know any more. Good luck.